Star Wars, Young Jedi Knights, Lightsabers, Chapter 12. Broad-shouldered Norris, former leader of the Lost Ones gang, a new stormtrooper trainee, spread his white armor on the bunk in front of him. He studied the pieces carefully, then began to assemble the glossy outfit, donning the components one at a time, then enjoying every minute of it. The boots went on first, stiff and sturdy, then the greaves, the shiny armor, the leg plates, body armor, arm plates, but finally the flexible but tough gloves. He felt as if he had been transplanted into the body of an assassin droid, a fighting machine encased in an impenetrable shell. Norris allowed himself a satisfied smile. This was much more impressive than anything his gang members have ever scourged deep in the decaying alleys of Coruscant's underworld. He had been the toughest, meanest, angriest young brute of all the gang members. But being a stormtrooper was better, so much better. All of his former companions were also soldier recruits, undergoing training. Norris fully expected to be the best among the new troops, just as he had been toughest among the lost ones. On the downside, he was no longer his own boss, free to do as he wished. He had to follow the orders of the Second Imperium. But with armor such as this, and the military might of those who followed their emperor, it was all worth it. Besides, if Norris proved himself valuable enough, his rank would increase, and he'd be placed in command of more soldiers, maybe even a fly TIE fighter. Without a doubt, he would have had more power and caused much more damage than he'd ever imagined when he was just a gang leader. Things were looking up. The last piece of stormtrooper outfit was the hard white helmet with the black eye goggles and mouth speakers. He slipped the helmet over his head and locked it into place at the neck joint. At last, he stood totally encased, completely protected, no longer an indisputable bully with a grimy outfit and stolen scraps as his only possessions. Now he was someone to be reckoned with, a stormtrooper. Norris marched down the corridor, taking care to clomp loudly on the deck plates with his armored boots. They made a satisfying sound. He had memorized the layout of the Shadow Academy station and knew exactly how to get to his private training room, where old Quor, the former TIE pilot, had ordered him to report. Standing outside the sealed door, he keyed in the access code. He felt a private thrill when Quor had given him the secret numbers and waited for the computer to process his entry request. With a hiss like an angry serpent, the door slid aside. Norris marched boldly into the shielded room, and the door sealed itself behind him. Quor stood inside the training chamber, holding a wicked-looking spear in the black-wrapped left hand. His droid replacement arm gripped the gleaming shaft with enough force to dent the metal. The serrated head of the spear had a long central prong with two side spikes curving up like a dragon's barbed tail. You're late, Quor said. He cocked his droid arm back and hurled the deadly weapon at Norris with all the strength of his robotic servo motors. Norris stood astonished as the deadly spear point hurtled toward his chest plate. He had time to cry, "Hey!" in panicked voice, amplified by his helmet speakers, before the barbed tip impacted squarely with enough force to smash him backwards. Norris slammed into the wall, his helmet ringing against the hard metal bulkhead. His vision sparkled with impending unconsciousness. He expected to see the spear sprouting from his heart and waited for his nerves to send shouts of moral pain. He wanted to scream at Quor, his supposed teacher, who had betrayed him, murdered him. But a split second later, his thoughts cleared enough to hear the clatter as the spear fell harmlessly to the floor. He looked down at his chest in amazement and saw only a nick of the white armor where the spear had struck. "What did you do that for?" Norris shouted. Quor answered with a gruff but calm voice. "To teach you to respect your stormtrooper armor, Norris," he said. "But also to warn you not to become overconfident. Yes, that armor is powerful enough to stop many weapons, such as this crude spear." The TIE pilot nodded toward the jagged weapon on the floor plates. Norris bent down to grab the spear, narrowing his eyes in rage as he looked at his teacher. The old pilot had made a fool out of him. He felt a dangerous anger boiling through his veins. He had a good mind to take the triple-pronged spear and to attack the pompous old man with it. "But don't think your armor is invincible," Coral reached inside his uniform, pulled out a deadly blaster pistol, and pointed it directly at Norris. For instance, this blaster could slice through that armor as if you were wearing nothing at all. Norris stiffened, looking at the ominous snub barrel of his pistol. His mind raced. What had he got himself into? Why was Coral so upset with him? He wondered whether he should swing the spear, knock the blaster away, and strike down a TIE pilot. That would serve the old man right. Coral turned the blaster pistol around and extended it to Coral. Norris, butt end first. Here, this will be our personal weapon, he said. Norris dropped the spear to the floor and tentatively took the blaster. The pistol felt very good in his gloved grip. Coral nodded at him. For target practice, he said. I went over to the controls by the door. The gray light-absorbing walls, the window's loom shimmered. Suddenly, Norris found himself standing in a dark, dim cave with fanged stalactites dripping from the walls and ceiling. Long spikes of stalagmites rose like blunt knives from the floor. Unseen water trickled somewhere, and a pallid light seemed to ooze from the pale rock itself. Despite the room's visible transformation, Norris could detect no change in the smell of the air through his helmet filters. The walls of this chamber will absorb blaster bolts, Coral said. Your weapon has already been set to full power. There won't be much recoil, but you must become accustomed to how it feels to aim and shoot and hit a target. Pay attention now. Watch for them as they attack. Watch for what? Norris said, looking around right and left. Who's going to attack me? The cave seemed more sinister now. The eye goggles distorted his vision, and he tried to compensate. Strange creature noise blurbed and hummed from every direction. He couldn't tell if they were insects or rodents, but they sounded vicious to him, as if everything within the chamber might be a predator. Norris had hunted in the lower alleys of Coruscant, tracking for giant granite slugs, multi-flinged spider roaches, mutilated feral rats, and his intuition told him that this was simply a testing chamber on the Shadow Academy. He didn't think there could be any real danger, not really. However, this cave certainly seemed real enough. With a squalling cry, a leathery-winged creature dropped out of his hiding place in the ceiling and swooped toward him. Its eyes were huge and slitted, and Norris could see pointy ears or antennae on top of his head, and razor claws at the ends of its flapping wings where it swept down. A Minoc. They weren't supposed to be terrible predators. But from the wicked fangs and claws that swooped toward him, Norris decided this one Minoc had a bad attitude. He pointed the blaster and squeezed off an energy bolt, but the beam went wide, striking a stalactite and startling up 4 more of the angry flying creatures. The new batch of Minocs also attacked, annoying him for disturbing their dark slumber. Norris squeezed the firing button again and again, adjusting his aim as he watched the bright bolts streak through the dimness. The bright spears of light dazzled his eyes, and he could barely see through his filtered goggles. The devilish Minoc swooped and avoided the deadly beams. This wasn't fair. This is supposed to be target practice. He shouldn't have to be able to point at a bantha's eye or hide behind a. Should have to be able to point at a bantha's eye or hide behind a window while shooting at an unsuspecting target in the streets below, as he had done in Coruscant. The blaster missed again and again as the Minocs swirled around him, flapping their wings and assailing his ears with skull-splitting screeches. Norris wondered if Coral had intentionally adjusted the bastard's aim point to throw the beam off. He suddenly realized he had been aiming wrong. It was his own fault. Reacting wildly to sudden fear, he had overcompensated. At first, the first Minoc came toward him again, claws outstretched and long fangs ready to tear him to shreds. He took a second to aim and squeezed off a long bolt that sizzled through the creature's body. The Minoc gurgled and fell to the floor where it was impaled by one of the stalagmites. Yes! Norris shouted in triumph. But 3 new Minocs swirled around him, attacked by his shout. He fired again and missed. The creatures came at him from the front, side, and behind. Norris turned, remembered to think, point, aim, and shoot. He eliminated another creature. 2 more emerged from the ceiling, but Norris swiveled at the waist and forced himself to concentrate. One of the 2 struck from behind, and though its claws skittered off Norris' white stormtrooper armor, he ignored it as he set the second Minoc firmly in his sights and shot it. Gotcha! He turned and carefully targeted the remaining creatures one after another. Gradually his shooting improved. He learned how to aim. He had learned how to be deadly. Finally, his blaster pack winked from low charge. Nori stood still and waited, but no more of the creatures emerged from the illusionary cave. He squinted through his goggles, alert for a new attack. The walls of the cave shivered and vanished, leaving only the flat metal shelf of the training chamber. He allowed himself to relax. Good, Quirrell said. Norris turned to see the old TIE pilot standing next to the controls. In the excitement of the exercise, he forgot entirely about the military instructor. That was fun, Norris said. I'm getting good at it. He looked at the blaster, wondering when he'd be able to use it next. When he'd be allowed to practice against real targets. You did well enough, Quirrell said. But you remember, Minox don't shoot back. Quirrell pushed another button on the controls, and the door of the training chamber opened. Come, we must go to the assembly rooms. Everyone will be there. The old TIE pilot waited for Norris to march ahead of him. Our great leader is planning to address his Shadow Academy. Zeke sat smothered in his private shell of self-confidence as dozens of other dark Jedi students gathered in the confined room where Brackus and Timothy Kai lectured them in the ways of the dark side. Zeke wore his padded suit of dark leather armor and sat straight and proud, shoulders squared. His lightsaber hung comfortably at his side. After weeks of training, he had grown still fully comfortable with it. It was like a part of him, an extension of his body. That, more than anything else, convinced him he was destined to be a Jedi Knight. He was a loner, but he was also the most powerful of Brackus' students. The other trainees flashed him occasional glances. Zeke had rapidly surpassed all of them, even those who had been at the Shadow Academy for months and months. But then, Zeke had the greatest motivation. He wanted to be strong. He wanted everything the Force would give him. Among those who gathered in Assembly Hall, he noticed Villis, the Night Sisters, Timothy Kai's dark-haired and brooding trainee. Villis, who was from Dathomir, was arrogant and smug, always looking down at him, never letting him forget that it was he who stunned Zeke when he resisted capture in Coruscant. Zeke wasn't about to forget. He felt a rivalry with this swarthy young man, who often talked too much about now how he had ridden Rancors and summoned storms in Dathomir. As if Zeke was supposed to be impressed. The ominous Timothy Kai stood next to her protege, Villis. She and the new Night Sisters had begun training Villis during the Shadow Academy's construction. They therefore considered him the first of the new Jedi, Dark Jedi, stronger than the others, for now. Zeke crossed his arms over his leather-armored chest, knowing that they were wrong, and one day Zeke told himself he would prove it. Bully Nuries and the Lost Ones, new stormtrooper recruits taken under the wing of the military commander, Quirrell, stood at attention. The other senior-ranking stormtroopers seemed at ease, and while the Lost Ones appeared restless and uncomfortable in their new body armor. But everyone listened intently to the great leader's speech. In the center of the chamber, the overwhelming and awesome image of Emperor Palpatine filled the open space in the confined room. The glowing hologram towered taller than any person present, a paternal figure and stern watchman. Crackling from transmission static, the image of the crawled Emperor addressed them from his hideout somewhere in the core systems. The yellow reptilian eyes under hooded brows watched the gathered students. The eye of Palpatine was always on them. Our plans for the Second Imperium are close to completion, the Emperor said. All beings are doing their part to return a new order to our galaxy. Each of you will help my Second Imperium become powerful. Each of you is an important part of a great machine that will crush the rebellion and put an end to their so-called New Republic. The holographic image pivoted, giving the impression that Palpatine's gaze was sweeping across each and every person there. Our space fleet grows day by day, thanks to the hyperdrive cores and turbolaser batteries stolen in a recent brilliant military ambush. That equipment has been helping us to create our own battle fleet. Our ships will, at first, be smaller than the behemoths the New Republic can bring against us, but we shall fight and we shall win. Our army of Dark Jedi is nearly complete. The Emperor seemed to grow larger, his image swelling to loom above them. The rippling hood around Emperor's shriveled face seemed to blow in an unseen wind. His eyes widened, blazing with a light of twin white suns. The Emperor's voice boomed out, raised to such a volume that Zeke flinched. Hear me, my Jedi Knights and Stormtroopers. The Force does not favor weaklings. We have the strength. The Force is with us. To victory! Then the transmission ended, and the Emperor's cowled silhouette dissolved into sparkles and static. The entire assembly set up a deafening cheer, in which Zeke joined wholeheartedly.